right, and it seems we are live again. Testing audio this time, making sure I've got that audio. Let me bring this down. Okay. All right, cool. Hey everyone, welcome back to our third Hangout session. So I'm super glad to be coming back to you with some audio because last week something funny happened. For some reason I had zero audio and I was actually speaking to myself on mute for about 40 minutes. And so thank you very much for joining me. If you have anything, just pop it into the chat. I've got a little device here, that records all your messages. So if you have any messages, any questions about singing, pop them in the chat. I should be able to see them. But as always, let's start off with a song. And the song I'd like to share with you all today, when you first listen to it, it actually is a song that sounds pretty chill. It sounds pretty kind of, if any of you listen to any lo-fi hip hop, it sounds pretty kind of relaxing. But when you dive deeper into the song, you start to realize that it is a bit of a downer actually. It's actually a bit of a sadder song because it really talks about the aftermath of after a breakup. So once you fall out of a breakup, some of those moments where you tend to take for granted, for example, waking up and having your partner next to you, all of a sudden those moments are different because you don't have that person there anymore. And so I'd like to start off today with a bit of a downer. So let's see if we can get there. So let's go. Oh, forgot. The song is called Always by Keshi. So I hope you enjoy. Let me get some reverb going and then we're good to go. All right. Hey, where'd you go? Could have sworn that you were sleeping over. Say, I don't know, but I thought that we were starting over, like we always do, like we always do. Was I a fool to think that we always would? Gone, not a trace, and it's almost like we never happened. No, not the same. Guess it hurt me more than I imagined. We always do. We always do. Was I a fool to think that we always would? Like we always do. Oh yeah, yeah. Like we always do. Was I a fool to think that we always would? All right, so that was Always by Keshi. So I hope you enjoyed. Now, I haven't seen any messages come through, so I just want to make sure everything is going okay. So I am online. Looks like this is all good as well. Just want to make sure that the connection is cool. Let me check it out here. Just because I know last time something funny happened, so I want to make sure things are coming across. And it looks like the connection is going well. So hey everyone, welcome officially to our third Hangout session. And so, as some of you might have known, last week was a bit of a funny one. Actually, let me turn off this reverb first. So, as some of you might have noticed, last week was a bit of an odd one because you might have seen me speaking live for about 40 minutes and the the microphone wasn't working for some reason. The audio wasn't coming across. So it was just me looking at my screen or looking at the camera and just talking to myself. So hopefully today, I've done a few checks just to make sure that this isn't the case. So hopefully today we are good to rock and roll. And for today, the first part of today's session, I really wanted to kind of share a topic that a lot of you might be thinking about or might be feeling about singing. And this is about confidence and vulnerability. Because I know for a lot of you out there, right, the idea of singing is really fun. So we like singing, we like being out there, we like making music, but there's always this kind of feeling of I'm not good enough, or I don't have the confidence to sing in front of people. I'm not confident with my voice. And so I wanted to jump in today and actually share maybe 3 little ideas that can help you push past this, because confidence is a real thing. Like being confident with a skill is being confident with your music and your singing is something real that we have to deal with, right? Yes, we're not tackling technique or whatnot, but this is something that can really change your voice. And I actually said confidence and vulnerability because I really do think that those two are quite tied together. And so, very first of all, I really want to just remind a lot of you out there, you are not alone. You are not alone in the sense that learning to feel confident and maybe sometimes not feeling confident is something we all go through, including myself. Because I'm not gonna lie, like when I was kind of approaching this song Always by Keshi, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't practiced it as well as I should have, and so there was a bit of a doubt in myself, right? And so there were moments where I felt like, oh, I really don't feel like I was as confident as I should have been, but I didn't let that stop me. And so what I really encourage you all is it's okay. It's okay to feel unconfident at times, right? There are moments where you're just not going to feel your best, or you don't feel like your voice is behaving the way you'd like it to, or maybe when you have to kind of sing in front of a friend, in front of a family, or all of a sudden that kind of feeling of confidence, lack of confidence, kind of hits you. And so I want to let you know you are not alone. So you're not alone in that. And this actually kind of brings me to point number 2. I would say confidence is, I think a lot of people perceive confidence as kind of you're kind of obviously like great posture, you're very loud, very strong, but I kind of really see confidence as a slightly different thing. So the way I kind of perceive confidence is, yes, we do have that fear, the fear of not doing well enough, the fear that our voice just isn't ready, the fear that maybe someone else might judge us. But I think true confidence comes from a point where even though you know that those things are happening, you still put yourself out there. You still take that extra step and you still be courageous, right? Because those are the things that are going to really, really kind of take your voice to the next level. Now, for example, so one thing that I do for a lot of people who are looking to take their voice to the next level is I do free consultations for them, right? Initially, just to kind of get the ball rolling. And for a lot of people in these consultations, probably this is probably one of their first times going and meeting someone about singing, right? Kind of putting themselves out there, right? And so I think the message here, right, is I think with these kind of consultations, during these consultations, there's going to be moments where you feel more vulnerable. Because, for example, one of the things I'd encourage for these kind of first time consultations is have a bit of singing happening, right? And sometimes, right, it can feel very, very kind of vulnerable. Like all of a sudden you have to put yourself out there, right, in front of this person who you might have just met, which is me, right, in this consultation. And so I would say, um, I'm, no, no. So I would say, like with these kind of consultations, you're going to feel those moments of vulnerability. But I think the most important thing is know that you're not alone, right? Because I've had plenty of students that have come through, done these consultations. And I think the ones who are willing to take that step forward for themselves, for their own voices, are the ones who feel so relieved. Similar to how, like, I think one way to think about it is if you've ever done a speech before, those moments leading up to a speech is always going to feel nerve-wracking. You're always going to feel like you're not good enough. You're always going to feel like I'm not so confident, right? But it's really by taking that action, just going for it anyway, just going for it. And knowing that you're not alone, you're not the only person who is doing this. There are other people who have gone through the same pathway, right? And I think let that be the fuel that encourages you to go for it. Because once you take that first step, you feel so relieved, right? Imagine that feeling after going for a speech, after you've done a speech, right? It just feels so good. I know you still might be a bit shaken, but that feeling of accomplishment and putting yourself out there is powerful. So powerful. So for those who have just joined us, at the moment I'm talking a bit about confidence and vulnerability because I think that's such a big part of us as singers, right? Because learning to put your voice out there and sing is really something that requires you to expose yourself a bit more, expose yourself. And so it's very, 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 it can be very, very tricky to kind of navigate. And so if you have any questions about confidence or vulnerability, pop them in the chat, right? I've got a little device here that will have will capture all your messages, and I'd love to kind of go through and answer some of your questions. So my third point, right? So I think the first 2 points we've talked about, which is number one, you are not alone, right? Vulnerability and lack of confidence is something we all face as singers, especially when you're first starting off. But what I would encourage you is that confidence or true confidence is less about just being egotistical or just saying, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best. It's less about that, right? But it's more about knowing that there is going to be a fear of judgment, knowing that at the moment, right, there might be a lot of things we could do with your voice, right? But then taking that and using it as fuel and taking that next step, whether it be chatting with me one-on-one or maybe be singing in front of your friends, right? Singing in front of your family. It's about taking all those kind of fears, translating them to a fuel, and then using that to take your next step. So finally, the last final step I would love to encourage you all is, I think with confidence, right, there is an element of this. So you got to get your mindset right, which is, yes, there's going to be fears and all this, but you need to be able to kind of push forward, right? Take that courage, take that step, right? The second thing is also, I'm also a big believer that competence breeds confidence. So essentially, the better you are at with your voice, the more you understand how the voice system actually works, the more confident you'll be able to go and then sing. Because one of the things that does make singers less confident is the fact that they don't have control of their voice entirely yet. Sometimes their voice might react a certain way on a particular day. Sometimes they might react a bit better, right? And that inconsistency might make them feel like, oh man, some days I just have it. So when they do kind of have to perform and they're on a day that they don't feel good about themselves, that's going to hold them back when they're singing. And so there is an element of, let's kind of get deeper with your craft, right? Let's understand what's happening with your body, what's happening with your vocal folds, what's happening with your vocal track. Can we get them to work a bit better, build some new habits, so that all of a sudden when you go and sing, you know you have the habits to fall back on. And so those are the three ideas, because I think confidence is such a big topic that I'm tackling recently, right? Because a lot of people who have approached me recently, one of the biggest issues is, hey, I feel like I can't sing with confidence, or I feel like I'm not confident with my voice. And whether that be maybe because they've been judged before, maybe they feel like their voice is unreliable. There are many ways you can start tackling it, and I just want to make sure that you all know that you're not alone. And so that's my little spiel on confidence. I love doing a tiny bit of this, if you're listening, just because I think that can maybe ignite some ideas in you on how to get past these certain hurdles. And so for today, for the Q&A today, I actually had a few questions that popped through on my chat. And so if you ever have a question that you'd like to get answered, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram at singwithivan, or on my email, singingsimplywithme@gmail.com. These are ways I start collecting these questions, and I answer them right here on this live for you all. So, all right. So, question number one. Ooh, this is a great question. So, can anyone learn to sing well? Can anyone learn to sing well? And actually, this was a question that was asked me, I think, 1 or 2 weeks ago. And I kind of kept it because, first of all, the audio didn't go through. So I actually couldn't answer it on the live. And the second thing is, I think it ties in really nicely to this idea of confidence. Because I think secretly, a lot of people do know that they can get better. They do know that they can sing well. Now, actually, let me tackle that big elephant in the room. So, can anyone learn to sing well? Yes, I think absolutely to the 100%, to the deepest. Let me say that again. So, can anyone learn to sing well? Yes, because from deep within my heart, and just knowing the journey that I personally gone through, from being absolutely terrible at singing, to being able to sing some of the songs that I've loved for years, that transition shows me that anyone can learn how to sing. Whether you think you maybe tone deaf, maybe if you're struggling with rhythm, maybe if you don't have the high notes, maybe if you feel like you don't have the tone of your voice that you desire, all of these can be transformed. And I've worked with so many people around the world, and they've all come in with their own unique problem. All of them can be improved, because the reason why I know this is because singing is just a bunch of habits and coordinations. Similar to learning how to throw a ball, right? There are certain muscular habits that we need to build, from learning to use the body, learning to get your chords to do the right thing, learning to maybe get your vocal tract to do the right thing, right? All of these things can be learnt. And so what I'm not saying is anyone can get it overnight, right? Because learning how to sing is honestly something that takes time. It takes time to develop. But anyone can learn to sing as long as you put in the time for it, practice, and you also go and get the right feedback, because those are the two things that are going to change your voice. And so I wanted to tie this in with confidence, right? Because I feel like what a lot of people get held back by is that fear of not being good enough, the fear of not being able to sing and sing and do the songs that they love justice. And so one of the things I'd love to kind of share is, and hopefully this can kind of do a bit of a mindset shift. I remember seeing this on Facebook recently, and I think it was Tom. I think Tom Bilyeu from Impact Theory. He's a guy I follow a lot, and he mentioned that one of the things you want to start doing whenever you're picking up a new skill, or whenever you're trying to change and take your voice to the next level, or do anything great with your voice, right? And you feel like you're not there yet, you need to add this to the end of your sentence. Yet. For example, if I go, I feel like I can't sing, or I feel like I can't learn how to sing, you want to kind of start to add this little word to the end of your sentence. I feel like I can't sing well yet. I feel like I can't sing the high notes yet. Because what that does is it forces you to think about more, think of a way to get to that point. Because as I said before, anything can be learnt. I think the biggest thing that's holding you back is yourself. That kind of little self-talk inside going, oh, I can't learn how to sing. I can't sing in front of people. I don't have the confidence to do that yet. And so, we have our first viewer joining. So, hey, Fancy the Bold, thank you for joining me. Let me know where you're joining me from, and if you have any questions about singing or confidence and vulnerability today, pop them in the chat. I would love to answer them for you. Georgina, yes, I love that. I am not a singer yet. That is the powerful. That is the key, right? A lot of us want to be somewhere, but we're not there yet. And to bridge that gap, yes, we just got to get the right guidance and obviously keep putting ourselves out there, right? But you have to make sure that you're in a position where you're thinking about how do I get there versus just kind of bringing yourself down, which I see too many singers, they do that too much themselves. They keep pushing themselves down. So Can anyone learn to sing well? Yes, yes, and yes. All right, all right, all right. Next question. So, I can sing in different tones and pitches, but my singing voice is terrible. How can I sound better? Oof, this is a great, great question. And I'm not gonna lie, I definitely need to hear you first because there's so many ways we can tackle this, right? There's many paths that lead to Rome. And so um, from the very top though, I can kind of give you some high level suggestions, but I would recommend just message me on Instagram or message me on YouTube or even Facebook if you've got me on Facebook, and I'd love to kind of talk to you a bit more. But in general, right, if you can sing the pitches right, if you can sing, if you can kind of go and match the melody, one of the things we can start looking at is tone, the tone of your voice, right? Because that determines a lot on how you sound. Because for example, I don't know, I think you guys can hear this. If I go, say if I'm singing this note, there are many ways I could sing this. If I can go, ah, 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 very nasty, very kind of, some might say like nasal, very, very kind of in your face, right? But if I go, ah, then I get this really kind of weird dopey sound as well. But I can also do this. Ma. They're all the same pitch. Every single pitch is the same, right? I didn't change it at all. But what I did change is the way I shaped my sound. And that comes from learning to shape the throat right. If you can learn to find the right kind of relaxation, get your throat to open up and to relax, you can then start shaping the sounds to how you'd like it. And so I would kind of get you to kind of record yourself, and maybe you can send the recording to me. I'd love to hear it. Just ask yourself, what are you hearing in the tone of your voice? Number one, is it too whiny? Is it too kind of bright? Is it too choked up and maybe too kind of dopey? Or is it somewhere in the middle? Because chances are, if it is one of those the first one, so where you get very whiny or maybe you're kind of a bit sunken in your throat, then that is something we need to address first. Now, if you're obviously in that kind of third part where it sounds quite balanced to yourself, then maybe it's something else, right? But we will definitely need to hear it first. I love it. I love it. New Mexico. Wow. I don't think I've ever had a student from New Mexico. That's really, really cool. Finally noticing my voice is starting to sound like one voice. Congratulations. That's a massive, massive one. But I need help getting the right compression in mixed voice. Ooh, that is a great one. And if that is a question, one thing I would encourage for you is check out some of my other videos on the puffy cheeks or the straws. This is actually something I learned from my coach, Tyler Wysong, and he is a massive fan of semi-occlusions. Essentially, we just want to block off some of the pressure, some of the air from coming out, so then our chords and maybe the vocal track does something better for us. And so play around with straw exercises, play around the puffy cheeks because they can do really, really, really well. One thing I've been experimenting actually is doing a puffy cheek with my tongue out. Because I feel like it just gets my tongue in a really, really nice sweet spot. It doesn't choke me off or anything. So play around with that. That can really help you find the right amount of compression in your voice. Question number 3. So what is nasal resonance and how can I achieve it? Wow, what a great quality question, because nasality or nasal resonance is something that trips up a lot of people because of the language we use. And let me explain what I mean, right? Instead of just throwing more words at you. So nasal resonance, right, often gets confused with a slightly whinier, a brighter sound. So if I go some people might call that nasality, right? Or a very kind of nasal voice. But what's actually happening there is something completely different. So nasality and nasal resonance, or maybe that kind of bright sound, can be very different. And so let's qualify this. So in my opinion, this is just my opinion, true nasality is when there is airflow coming out of your nose, right? Because if I hum, if I hum, right, and then I block my nose, all of a sudden, right, that sound gets blocked off. And the reason why is because all the airflow is coming out of my mouth. And yes, I do feel like there's a lot of kind of ring or like a little buzz around my nose bridge or behind it, which is why people call it nasal resonance, right? But I can also do this. If I go, ah, 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 it doesn't really distort the sound too much. Ah, ah, ah. Even if I block with my nose, I still hear the same sound. And that's because the way I'm getting to that sound is very different. Instead of letting air through my nose, I'm actually constricting a tiny bit of the back of my throat, right, to get some twang, right? And so I just wanted to kind of qualify this because when people are talking about nasal resonance, in general, maybe we do want a bit of VPO, which is that kind of slight bit of airflow through the nose, but we don't want to overdo it. And this is something I'm actually working on with myself. And so one of the things you can actually play around with, achieving nasal resonance, and this is very interesting. And I know I'm kind of just going off the plan here. Maybe my answer doesn't make too much sense, but shout out to Tyler because he actually taught me this this week and the week before. You want to actually rely on nasality for a moment. So for example, if you go block of your nose, sna so if I block off my nose and I intentionally let a bit of airflow come through my nose, there's a slight bit of sensation happening behind my nose. I feel my nose buzzing a bit more. The thing that gets really tricky though is when you overdo the nasality. So if you go do you notice that, right? It suddenly gets a bit more muffled, a bit more kind of trippy. That's the thing that kind of trips most people up because having a bit of nasal airflow is not necessarily bad because what that does, it actually gets my sound sitting really nicely behind my nose. And it makes it a lot easier to kind of hit those high notes as well. But if I overdo it and I kind of I close down everything, that's way too much. Way too much. Because if I go, I feel a lot of ring behind my nose, but it doesn't change the sound too much. So long-winded answer again. Man, I need to work on learning to kind of give more short and concise answers. But nasal resonance is essentially when you do feel a bit of kind of that ping over here. But the thing I will get you to be careful of is don't overdo the nasality, which is too much airflow into the nose. So there should be a feeling of ring somewhere in the front of your face. You might feel it slightly differently, but it should not get to the point of this. Way too nasal, way too nasal, way too much nasality, way too much airflow going through your nose. So let's qualify that idea. I've been working on belting. It's really loud in some ways, but when actually, let me read this again. I've been working on belting. It's really loud in some ways, but it's easy. So a few other ways I do it are quieter. What ways do you suggest for belting? Oh, great question. How is your mix going? Your mix voice? The reason why I'm asking this is because I find that in general, belting gets a lot easier when you have a great mix as well. And what that means, right, is because when you're in a more of a mixed voice, your chords are not resisting too much breath pressure and nor too little. So it's quite balanced in terms of pressure and compression. And then all you do is you kind of open your mouth a bit more so that you have the resonance of a belt. Because what determines more of a belt or more of a chesty sound is when it's more of a resonance thing actually. There might be a slight increase in breath pressure, but it's more of a resonance thing. So what I would encourage, right, is maybe try getting to some of those notes in a mix first, and then you gradually open up your mouth. Gradually open your mouth. And so to Fancy the Bold, amazing name. If you need a bit of help on that, I think that's definitely more of an advanced topic. And I don't know if I want to kind of cover it too much in a live session like this, just because I don't want you to hurt yourself. Because belting is a bit more high intensity. DM me on Instagram. Let's chat a bit more there. I want to see exactly what you're doing. Awesome. So I've got time for maybe one more question. So this was another great question. How do you keep your throat open while singing? I find that after a few words, I close up. I tend to close up. And so this is a good question. Really good question, because there are no muscles to open the throat. You might kind of hear singers, might hear teachers go, "Hey everyone, try to open your throat and just think of like having like an egg down the back of your throat." And I think you have to take that with a grain of salt, because, for Fancy the dog, my bad, Fancy the Bold. Sorry about that. Fancy the Bold. My Instagram is Sing with Ivan. So if you're on YouTube, there might be a little link in the description below, but it's Sing, SING, with Ivan, IVAN. So if not, I can drop in the comments afterwards. How do you keep your throat open while singing? So as I mentioned, it's not that feeling necessarily of having something open the back of your throat up, because people can interpret that very differently. The reason why I know that is because I had that trouble, right? When I was told back then to open my throat up or have more space in my throat, what I ended up doing was this: "Fly me to the moon, let me play." Like it's just not a good sound to play around with, because what I was actually doing there was pulling my tongue back. And that feeling of pulling your tongue back, you can actually try this yourself. Pull your tongue back and see what that does, right? See what that does to your sound. For some of you out there, I'm not gonna lie, it might feel like the throat opens more, but it's not the proper way to get there, because what that's actually doing is it's actually constricting and pressing down against your Adam's apple. And what that does is it's just gonna make it harder to sing up higher or even sound more clean in general. The way I recommend to get your throat a bit more open is this. And this, gosh, man, I'm quoting Tyler a lot because he called me out on he was like, "Hey, you got to give some credit to the people you learn things from." Yes, so I'm going to do that now. So essentially, right, you want to take a nice sniff, because if you go, now this is just a little scale I do once in a while, but what I was doing and focusing on is getting a nice sniff every single time. Sorry about that. Yes, that was a slip of the mouth, and you might notice this with me. There's a lot of words I accidentally slip out, and I don't mean any harm. It's just it's just who I am as a person. So now, and NG, right? And so you want to take a sniff through your nose, because I find that a nice, true, authentic sniff really gets your throat to open up, right? And it might not open up as much as going as much as kind of pulling your tongue back, but that I would say is maybe where your open throat should feel more like. So if you go one more time. If you do that, right, all of a sudden that's going to give you a true kind of open mouth feeling, a true open throat feeling. And so what you need to do is try to get that more into a song, right? But I would start there. I honestly would start there. Another little tip I have is watch out for your jaw, because a lot of times when your throat feels like it's closing a bit more, there's two things that could happen. Either you're opening your mouth way too much, or you're keeping your mouth way too closed, right? If it's clenched or too open, because what that does is it gives your body, or it tells your mind that, hey, we might be swallowing or eating and chewing on some food, because when you chew, right, there's a bit of a movement there, right? So one of the things you want to start to encourage with maybe your voice and when you're singing is, can you keep your jaw maybe about one pinky or maybe one thumb, right? Like maybe one finger width. See if you can keep it there, right? And let your other articulators work more. So for example, fly me to the moon, Let me play among the stars. When I'm doing that, right, I know it kind of restricts the articulation a tiny bit, but I'm not going fly me to the moon. I'm not trying to overuse my jaw, because when you do that, that starts to encourage a bit of that swallowing reflex. Breath of fire sniffs. Yes, I like that. I like that. So yes, just play around with the sniff, because if you notice your throat getting tight, especially in a song, right, take a cheeky little sniff. Lovely. I do those to warm up my breathing. Yes, yes, you're on the ball, on the ball. So two things in terms of keeping your throat a bit more open. Number one, between phrases in a song, if you do notice that, take a little bit of a sniff. Now, like probably the trick, or like the key to getting it really good in a song is don't make it so audible, because if I go, that's way too audible. But if you just go, hopefully that doesn't come across as loud on the mic. And then the second thing is, probably as you are singing, watch out for your jaw. If you're moving your jaw a whole ton, maybe that's over engaging it. Maybe using your jaw more than you think. I hope this helps, right? So that is one way I'd love to encourage you all to start keeping your throat a bit more open, and also not let it tense and tighten up too much. And that's it for today. I'm still trying to figure out these kind of the layouts of these kind of lives, but I hope you all enjoyed it, right? We talked about confidence and vulnerability at the beginning. So if you missed that, just rewind, watch the replay. But we talked about how you can start being more confident as a singer, because technique aside, right, like one of the biggest things that's holding people back is themselves. They think they're not good enough. They think that they don't have a voice. Maybe they think they can't even learn how to sing. And so we got to overcome that together first. And just as a reminder, you are not alone. You're not alone. And what we then did was we did a bit of a Q&A. So we've answered some really awesome questions. So if you've missed that, go back and rewind. Just rewatch this whole session. There's a lot of kind of gems, hopefully, that came across. But apart from that, I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thank you for joining me, Fancy the Dog, and thank you for joining me, Georgina. I think hopefully I've added some value to you all today. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at singwithivan, or you can message me via my email, singingsimplywithme@gmail.com, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Apart from that, I'm off, and I will see you all in 2 weeks for our next live. Take care. Yeah, stop this.